Hello and welcome to another episode of the Investor Financing Podcast. And I'm your host, Beau and on today's show, we got somebody from Nashville. So this is our first guest from Nashville, and I was telling Tyler that I've only been there once, and it's a city I could definitely live in, and it's an amazing place. And I live in Las Vegas, the other bachelor capital or bachelorette capital of the world. So we live in two fun towns. I think Nashville is just. I just when I got there, I just knew it was a town for me. I need to go spend more time there. But today's show is we're going to be talking not so much about residential. We're going to talk about commercial and commercial real estate and development and creating a vertically integrated business. And Tyler is a perfect example. I stumbled onto Tyler's YouTube channel, and it's probably like the coolest channel ever because he just does an awesome job of describing projects, why he's doing these developments. And you really get a lot out of the channel. I mean, there's a lot of value in there. So it's like, as soon as I saw this channel, I was like, we got to get this guy on the show because first of all, he's a younger gentleman. He knows what he's doing. He's been involved in real estate for a long time. He's super sharp. He's he's his own character. You can tell he is who he is. And I like that about him. And so I'm excited to welcome him to the show today to learn more about commercial real estate, how to size up deals, how to really take a good look at development in general. And then he's also a broker, right? So he's a broker, and he also has a property management company. So it's gonna be interesting to hear the story of how this all kind of came together. They all work well together, so you got it. So let me just do a quick intro. Tyler is founding principal and president of the Cauble Group. He's a native Nashvillian that has not only been a witness to the city's tremendous growth, but is also involved in its developments, renovations, and he also does a lot of volunteer work. As president of the Cauble Group, Tyler helps bring together buyers, sellers, landlords, and tenants in retail, office, and industrial and multifamily real estate. He's committed to helping business owners understand the markets so that they can grow their business and to be part of Nashville's future. Welcome to the show. You got an impressive background, and you're a very humble guy. I talked to you before we went live. So thank you so much for spending the next 20 or so minutes with us to talk about real estate and the down and dirty about commercial real estate. And can you just walk us back? I think I heard on a previous show I was watching that your background was in construction, and then how did that transition into commercial real estate?
Yeah, Bo, thanks for having me on, man. Excited to be here talking about commercial real estate. It's one of my favorite things in the world. And I bet you and I could definitely trade some bachelorette war stories coming from Nashville and Vegas. It's funny investing in a city. I mean, I'm from Nashville. It was not a party city when I was growing up, and it's been fun to watch it become that over the years. But yeah, so I got back when I was 12 years old, I started working every summer for my grandfather, who owned a construction company. So I was never smart enough or talented enough to be a skilled craftsman on the side, but I played football and lacrosse, and I was big enough to hand a sledgehammer, and they'd tell me to go demo the bathroom, and I'd go do it. So I had a lot of fun doing it. But yeah, it was great, kind of starting off in the construction arena, because I just never realized until years into the business that people look at a space and they have no idea what they're looking at. Whereas at least I can, and again, I'm not the best guy out there in the world. I still hire inspectors. I still have a team that is much better versed in everything than I am. But I can at least look at something and tell, like, is that going to be expensive or not to fix or replace? So did that every summer until I graduated high school. The summer that I graduated high school, I actually got into sales, sold Cutco knives, and crushed it, man. That's when I learned, like, okay, I can have a conversation with anybody, and I can do sales really well. I was the number one rep in the Eastern region that summer. Made about 30 grand.
Did you outsell Hal Elrod? Because he was a Cutco guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. So Hal was a Cutco guy. I'd have to go back and look at his stats, because I had one of the biggest first summers, but he sold for like a long time, and he had some like crazy sales. Like he went and sold 2 entire companies. I ended up selling like $85,000 my first summer. I think the average rep sells about $3,000. So it was a good summer, made about 30 grand, went to the University of Tennessee, and I was sitting in class. I was fortunate enough to go to a nice high school. So sitting in class one day, taking a geology course that I had taken in 8th grade. And I remember sitting there learning about pyroclastic flow and just totally zoning out, running the math. 30 grand over 3 months is $120,000 a year doing sales. What the hell am I doing in this class? So finished freshman year, dropped out, got into commercial real estate, and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's kind of how I was too. I was like, I was never a good student. And then until I discovered real estate, then I became a student. I'm a lifetime student now. And it's because I'm passionate about it. And I encourage anybody out there to follow your passion on what interests you. If going to college, maybe, I mean, you look at right now, we have such labor shortage in the service industries, like the HVAC technicians, all this stuff. I mean, I know a lot of people that own like HVAC companies and they're making multiple millions of dollars a year. So, follow your passion and go after whatever you want to do. I think that's like a perfect point in our world right now. As you're doing construction and just, it's hard, labor shortages and supply chain issues. So that's been probably a challenge on a lot of stuff too. So that's
absolutely. I mean, I'm a big proponent of that as well, right? I mean, I listen to audiobooks, I listen to podcasts, I read a ton. I'm always trying to, I'm having conversations like this, trying to figure out, what out there do I not know that I could take and learn from and create something new from. I mean, that's how we come up with the ideas for our projects, because a lot of the development that we do is very different from the market. And that's because we're going out and studying all these different places and seeing how new construction materials are getting used and how could we use that in a different way. And when you do things like that in this business, whether it's a house or it's a commercial building, your project goes from a commodity that's one of thousands of other buildings to something very unique that investors will fight over to buy or tenants will fight over to lease. So that was one of the best lessons I ever learned is, if you create something cool and unique enough by listening to the market, then you can create something that everybody wants. I mean, we did a project called The Wash, where we're converting a car wash into 5 micro restaurants and a bar. I mean, they're all under 400 square feet. And when I told everybody that we were going to get $100 a foot for them on an annual rent, everybody said that I was crazy because that's 3 times market rent. But I had a hunch that since they were so small and since it was in the pandemic, they had no interior seating, it was all exterior seating, that we would crush it. And we did. I ended up getting that rent number and we leased it within 2 weeks of announcement. So I had tenants fighting over it for me. I didn't even have to go work.
So that's like really what you're doing is you're really like a commercial real estate trendsetter. I mean, you're really in the forefront of this because you go against the grain. You're actually like, okay, you're actually taking deep thought about this location. You're doing what we'll call adaptive reuse projects, right? Where you're taking an existing building or shell and converting it into a future use that's probably more viable. And that's like, there's so many buildings that need to be adapted and reused, right? And so you're seeing that you're seeing that in hotels converting to multifamily, and you're seeing office buildings being converted into affordable housing. It's amazing. But you also have to have a lot of foresight in the industry, in the commercial sector. So having, I think, best of both worlds is, and you see a lot of companies out there, like they're commercial brokers, but they're also developers, right? Because you really you're the boots on the ground, the market. And I believe you're like kind of focused on East Nashville?
That's right. Yep.
And so you're a little bit outside the city. And so that's now with the tremendous amount of growth Nashville's gone through. I mean, I remember I had a friend that moved there and he was telling me about all the skyscrapers in the sky in downtown. Like there's just a lot of development, but obviously development always sprawls out. And so East Nashville was probably years ago was just kind of overlooked and nobody was investing there. And you were one of the person that was actually saw that the growth was going there and you just started developing. What was your first project in East Nashville?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it's funny. I'd never really thought about this side of town, even though I grew up in Nashville. I mean, it just wasn't really a side of town that you went to. First project I did was just an office lease, right? I mean, the Cobble Group took on a listing from a buddy of mine that owned a title company over here, Wagon Wheel Title. They were leasing out their old office space, and we came in, and I think that we set a, a price per square foot record on an older building like that. It was $26 a foot net, which now you look at and you go, well, yeah, that's nothing. It's only been 3 years. But back then, that was a lot of money. Now that same building probably goes for $32 a foot. So that tenant got a good deal. But yeah, that was the first one that did it. I mean, that same friend, his name's Brandon. He took me to grab a drink at Crying Wolf, which is a really cool bar on this side of town. And I had just never really spent any time over here. And something about that bar just kind of hit me. I was like, man, this is really cool. This is, it wasn't a neighborhoody sports bar. It was like a gritty, not biker bar, but it was gritty and dark and it had really good whiskey and beer. And there was just something about that I thought was really cool. And so that's when I fell in love with East Nashville and started working over here. Trying to think of what the first project that I did on the side of town was. It's probably actually the office building that I'm sitting in right now. It's a 27,500 square foot, 3-story office building at the north end of Dickerson Pike. Not far from the interstate. It was older, had been built in like the 70s, 80s. It was a little tired. I bought it 40% occupied, and that was back in November, December of 2019. And through the pandemic, renovated it, leased it up, despite what everybody was saying about office. Neighborhood office is doing just fine. We're probably at 90% occupancy now, and the building is awesome. And we operate out of here, and it just gets cooler every few months. We just put a little bit more money into it, make it nicer. So that was probably the first one I did, was just a pure office play, renovation.
You're listening to the Investor Financing Podcast. We'll be right back after this break. Are you looking for funding? Are you getting frustrated trying to find a lender? Visit investorfinancingpodcast.com and click the Get Funding button. Complete the simple form and schedule a free phone consultation with one of our placement specialists. We have a proprietary directory of funding partners that can help you get the funding you need. It's fast and easy to explore the options available for your specific needs. Don't wait. Visit investorfinancingpodcast.com and get connected.
So if somebody was interested, let's just say somebody listening is an investor or potentially it's an agent that's doing residential and they really want to get started in the commercial space, and kind of understanding the fundamentals of commercial, like how to figure out, I mean, it's pretty simple on residential to go, okay, I'm going to buy this property for 200. I'm going to put in 50 and the comps are 400,000. It's pretty, on a fix and flip, it's pretty easy to anticipate. But when you're doing kind of like a value add office building, I mean, it takes a lot more kind of skill set. Where'd you learn your skills? Did you kind of have a broker mentor originally that you worked underneath that taught you the whole leasing business?
Yeah, I mean, I worked as the in-house leasing agent for a boutique development firm for about 4.5 years before I went off on my own. And that was where I learned everything. They gave me a shopping center and an office building and told me to go find tenants. And I said, well, how do I do a lease? And they said, well, find a tenant and we'll show you. So I just went and started knocking on doors and cold calling until I found people, and slowly, deal by deal, they taught me a little bit more and a little bit more. And I just kind of got the hang of it that way. I've always learned better by doing. So, the nice thing that I had was somebody to kind of show me the ropes as we went along. And I always recommend to new people trying to transition into commercial real estate, go find somebody that can teach you or show you how to do it. Because if you screw this up, you probably will get sued. I mean, it's a business. And if people lose money, they're not going to be very happy with you. So definitely learn from somebody that has been there. Go watch my YouTube channel. We've got hundreds of videos on commercial real estate there, trying to teach you how to do different things. So, yeah, it was a good learning experience. That's actually where I decided to start working with small businesses exclusively. We don't really work with national tenants. I'm not really interested. To me, they kill neighborhoods and they don't bring a lot of value to a city. Well, they can to a city, but not to a neighborhood. And I just saw how small businesses kept getting screwed over by landlords because they knew how to run their business. They had no idea what they were doing when it came to the leasing process. So that's why I ended up writing the book, which you can see up there. Open for Business, The Insider's Guide to Leasing Commercial Real Estate, which is really like, it's a quick read, but it's just intended to show people how to go about the leasing process. So whenever somebody asks me that question, that's the first thing I do. I'll just you can get a free PDF download on my website if you want. But I'll usually just give those books out for free and just say, look, if you want to know how the leasing process works in commercial real estate, just read this book. It gives you an overview.
That's awesome. I love it. On the financing side, I work with a lot of business owners. I package and do a lot of SBA financing with that. That's really cool because what we're doing is rent replacement. A lot of times they're an attorney and they want to buy a building and it's, SBA financing, you can get 90% leverage. It's if it's for owner users. So anybody listening, you can
look
at, yeah. 504.
We're doing one right now, actually. Yeah. At a hotel.
Yeah. Hotels. And I'll give everybody a hint. I always talk about this. There's something called the 504 Green program. Usually you're capped at 5 million in total proceeds. But if you're, buying hotels or expanding and doing self-storage or any owner user business where you're growing, you can actually get 16.5 million in SBA proceeds by doing an SBA 504 Green. And so what that means for buying power, you have about $38 million in buying power. So if you can expand greatly with it. So small businesses out there, you should be doing this. And I like the fact that you really kind of niche down and you get to pick you've built a business. Now you can pick the clients you want to work with. And also you can do your own project. So you do a combination of brokerage business and you have some agents that work for your brokerage. You also do some development where you're a owner, partner, developer. And then now because of the need, you needed to integrate a property management company in. So where else do you see your company growing? Are you going to just grow those pillars or are you going to expand out from there?
Yeah, we've teased for a while because, we've got the brokerage, property management, and development, which also raises capital for investments. We've teased for a while doing construction. But man, the salaries that I'm seeing for qualified property managers, they're pushing $120,000 a year. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And also subs are just such a pain right now. It's so tough to deal with. I would almost rather negotiate a contract with somebody else and let them put up with the BS. So, we'll continue to grow these three pillars. I think when the time is right, we'll add construction. But I've also started diversifying my portfolio in different ways. I invested in a hat company last year called Daisy May that does custom handmade hats, invested in them. And then I actually placed them in a building that I own. So it's, I'm getting a little bit on both ends, which is always nice. I'm opening up a bar that I'm putting into one of my buildings as well. So we're kind of starting to diversify and I'm opening a hotel, right? Which will have operations. It'll be something totally different. So kind of starting to diversify my holdings so that my income is not entirely dependent on commercial real estate, which, we kind of preach that every day in this business. If you own one single family home and the tenant moves out, you have 100% vacancy, right? So go buy 10. And that's what I'm looking at right now is, how can we go from, I think I've got 10 or 12 different income streams to 20 or 30 in the next couple of years.
That's awesome. I love that. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm 44 years old and I'm like, okay, the average millionaire has at least 7 streams of income. So that means you need to have multiple income streams. And how can you diversify and grow and keep on growing? I like the fact that you're going to have businesses within your properties that you already own. So really you can control a lot of the cash flow and that's really smart too, to do that. And then, so really you're going to keep focusing on East Nashville and just keep building it out. And it seems like it'll eventually be this mecca. And the housing cost around the neighborhoods is less expensive than most other parts of Nashville right now, or the prices?
It
lot
used to
higher.
be. It used to be, but this is one of the first neighborhoods outside of downtown, so it's truly an urban neighborhood. So I mean, you used to be able to buy things affordably over here, but now it's gotten expensive. I mean, I remember a few years back when we saw the first $1 million house sell, and now it seems like you can't buy anything over here for 750. So it's kind of crazy to see how that's taken off. I mean, of course, look, you can buy stuff that's 400, 500, right? But it's going to be, I was looking at Zillow last night, talking with my girlfriend about it. And, you know, we looked at like 400, I think we capped it at 500,000, just curious. Let's look at what's going on in the neighborhood. And they were like 800 square feet, 2 beds, 1 bath. It's crazy. So it's gotten expensive. And that was why I decided to start. That was another one of the reasons I decided to start focusing on commercial on this side of town. Commercial traditionally lags behind residential pretty significantly. Usually it's at least 2 years, sometimes maybe more. And so we've got plenty of neighborhoods over here that are popping off, and they have great houses and a lot of residents. And they're undergoing renovations and flips and new construction, but there's no commercial to serve them. So like on Dickerson Pike, a couple of years ago, my buddies opened up a coffee shop. They were the first coffee shop to reopen on Dickerson Pike, and uh, like nothing else on this corridor at the time. It's like rundown tire shops, old buildings, vacant, and it's packed every day. I mean, if we went in there right now, it's 2 o'clock on a rainy Thursday. I guarantee you that place is full. It's crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, you're motivating me to get in. I've been a California real estate broker for years. Never got into the commercial, but I've always wanted to learn the leasing business. It always intrigued me for some reason. I just never.
Yeah.
I'm always kind of gun shy. Like, oh, it's going to be too. It's like, you know how you psych yourself out. Like, oh, it's going to be complicated. I don't like complicated. But I work with so many business owners now that I feel like I just would be kind of a cool, useful tool to have in my tool belt. And any investor should be, proficient in understanding how leases work and how leases impact the value in commercial real estate. A good lease is going to impact the value of the property. So it's not like that's the way we force appreciation in commercial. And that's when you're doing these value adds, that's what you're doing essentially, is you're increasing occupancy, getting better, longer leases. It becomes a really good product, and banks want to lend you money, essentially, right? That's the key.
Yeah, I mean, residential, you're kind of capped by your comps, right? You've got to wait for the neighbor to sell his house for a little bit more so that you can sell yours for a little bit more. Whereas in commercial, I can buy a building in the middle of nowhere and lease it, and now I could sell it based on the lease because it's an investment. It's not just a house. It'll have a long-term lease. I mean, we bought a building last year for $435, I want to say. This is 2 years ago, $435,000. And I went and got a lease executed at $26 a foot, triple net, before we closed on the property. And the bank came back and appraised the building for $650,000 based off of that lease. So we had to bring almost no money to the table. To buy that property because we had so much equity already built up in it with the lease. And that is, you're absolutely right. That is the power of commercial real estate, is I don't have to wait for the market to slowly go up. I can just go sign a lease and it's already worth $200,000 more than we have it under contract for.
That's really amazing. That's why everybody listening, you really need to learn this business, because that's where, and it's like a harder business to figure out too. So that means there's less competition right now, at least, because if you have an obsolete building and it was an owner user building, like people are like, oh, there's only one use for this building, where somebody that understands this can say, hey, well, what if we carve this shell up into 3 smaller spaces, and this is more of an avatar type of tenant, right? Like you have to have that foresight to figure out like who's going to be leasing this property and what's the highest and best use of the property. But that's where you can make huge money quickly. And that's amazing. Like, so really you could tie up a property, knowing that you could probably get a pretty high level tenant before you close escrow, get that lease signed up. And then with that, it's like, hey, I've just increased the value of the property. and the banker says, yes, you did, I will lend you, almost 100% of the deal because you just increased the value $200,000 by this tenant who's super strong.
It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Is most of the leasing you do triple net lease type? Can you explain the different leases that you usually do?
Yeah. So triple net is, that's the buzzword in commercial real estate, right? And triple net can be great. It can also not be so great, but triple net means that the tenant is responsible for paying the 3 nets on the property. That means common area maintenance, property taxes, and building insurance. So the rent is net of all expenses to the landlord, right? So the rent is basically what the landlord takes home minus your mortgage. And landlords like that because if like we just had this happen, I own a 330,000 square foot shopping center, and we just got a whole bunch of ice this winter. And you can imagine how labor intensive and costly it is to get somebody out there every morning it ices over to drop salt and shovel snow and ice. Now we are like basically required to do that because it's a safety issue. If I didn't have the tenants paying for the common area maintenance cost, I, as the landlord, would be 100% responsible for that, but I get to pass that on to the tenants. If property taxes go up, the tenants have to pay it. If the building insurance goes up, the tenants have to pay it. The tenants are responsible for their utilities. I, as the landlord in a triple net lease, am basically just responsible for the structural aspects of the building. There's also a full service lease, full service gross. There's a modified gross, which could be modified gross is a hybrid of full service and triple net, but a full service means there's one lump sum paid by the tenant. And then I, as the landlord, will pay all of the expenses. So you pay me $30 a foot, and then I go and pay the CAM tax, insurance, utilities, maintenance, whatever. They both have their pros and cons. And we don't have to go too far into that because we could spend hours talking about it. But, basically like triple net can be good. Full service can be good. The problem with triple net is that a lot of unsophisticated tenants, like if you're dealing with small businesses, local businesses, triple net is really hard because they don't understand why rent isn't all in one lump sum. They just don't get it. And it's really tough to explain what triple net means. If you're dealing with national corporations, they fully get it and will not argue. I've had people come back and try and pay less on their triple net fees. Like the triple net fees are what they are. I'm not just making up a number. Like this is how much it costs on a per square foot basis to maintain and pay for this property. And somebody came back to me and tried to negotiate the CAM fees. And I said, you can't negotiate that. They are what they are. I don't even set them. So, it does happen though. So that's why sometimes full service can be advantageous because you just say, hey, I'm going to build in a 10% buffer as the landlord of, fluctuation. And here's the fee. You tell the tenant it's all in one lump sum. It's very easy for them to understand.
Very good. That's good. And your book, do you talk about some of this in your Open for Business book?
Oh yeah. Yep. I talked through the pros and cons of each and why you may or may not want to sign a certain one.
So, and if I heard you correct, we can go to your website and download, or I'm a hard copy. I'd probably just go to Amazon and buy the book because I like a physical book. I hate reading online. So you can go to Amazon, buy the book. Is the link on your website?
Yeah. You know what? By the time this goes live, I'll just set up a web page for your listeners. So if you go to tylercauble.com/Eckstein, I'll just have a little goodie page set up for downloadables, my book, whatever else you'll need.
Oh, perfect. Well, I don't want to take all day here. I could ask you a million questions, but maybe at some point we could dive deep in looking at a deal and kind of doing like a little PowerPoint online so we could show people a little bit more because you're a wealth of information. I know I learned a lot and really appreciate your time. And everybody, you definitely want to look at his YouTube channel and go to his website because there's a lot of videos and you're going to get a lot of value out of it, especially if you want to get in a commercial space. And they're also pretty entertaining too. So,
Thank you, Beau. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, we love putting those videos out. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, definitely check out the YouTube channel. And if you ever have any questions on commercial real estate, I'm at commercial_in_Nashville on Instagram. I don't really use any other social media, so hit me up there.
All right. Appreciate your time. Everybody, please like and subscribe to the video. and refer it to your colleagues, and we'll bring awesome guests as usual. So everybody have a good day. We'll see you soon.
See y'all.